I couldn't understand him. Not then, not now, even after all these years have passed. Back then, though, I was much younger, and I was so much more sure of myself. I prided myself on having things all figured out in life. After all, I was a leader in my faith community, and when somebody needed something about the law explained to them, they got directed to me, Nicodemus. And if I didn't know the answer, I would study up on it, often late into the night. And I'd get back to whomever it was that was doing the asking. I sat on all the boards in the temple, and I was active on the Chamber of Commerce in Jerusalem. Well, back then I heard about this rabbi named Jesus, and he was causing quite a stir around, you know. He was turning water into wine at a wedding over in Cana, and he was upsetting the tables of the money changers in the temple. Some said he was a revolutionary. Some said he was a healer. Others said he was plain dangerous. And there was a lot of buzz around out there on the streets, and some were hanging on to every word that he said, while others were saying he has to be stopped. I just hung around the edges, listening and kind of scratching my head from time to time about all the things, thinking about all the things he was saying and doing. Finally, I just had to know more about who he really was and what his purpose was. It was late at night. I remember the night. People had long extinguished their lanterns and they headed off to bed. And my soul was pretty restless. And I tossed and turned in bed. And I decided that I needed to get up and I needed to go and see this man Jesus for myself and have a conversation with him and see if I could figure him out. Okay, I know. Some call me cowardly, you know. They said I skulked around after darkness, under the cover of darkness all the time. And many have asked why I didn't go and ask my questions in public, in the light of day. Well, not only was it hard to get close to Jesus in the run of the day because everybody was pressing in on him, eager to hear his every word, but I probably also would have lost a lot of respect among my colleagues. And I would have lost some of my business interests as well. When I knocked on the door that night, I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to say. And so I simply greeted him with a statement. And I said, "Rabbi, we know you must be from God, for no one can do these wonderful things apart from the presence of God." Well, it was after that initial comment that the conversation got kind of murky, kind of blurry. Jesus just smiled at me and he said, "Well, I tell you honestly, no one can see God at work without being born from above." And I scratched my head and I said, "Born from above? What was this guy talking about? How can anyone be born after having grown old? Can one enter a second time into their mother's womb and be born?" It didn't make any sense at all to me. "How can these things be?" I said. That's when he said, "To be part of God's realm, to be part of God's kingdom, you need to be born of the Spirit as well as the flesh. And the Spirit is like the wind. It simply blows freely wherever it pleases." And he said the realm of God is like that. You can't see where it starts or where it ends up, but you know that you are part of it. I still didn't get it. But we talked some more, and I asked some more questions, and Jesus seemed to be just plain messing with my previous understandings. I just couldn't get my head around it. He sounded almost indefinite, and I was used to things being very definite, very nailed down. My understanding of God had clear lines and parameters. It was like he was knocking down all those things and trying to take me into places where I'd never been before, introducing me to worlds outside the lines, outside the boxes. Nothing seemed to fit in with the way that I had been trained, and nothing seemed to fit in with my traditions or my beliefs that I had learned and studied since I was a child. Why would he want me to start all over again after I had worked so hard all my life to figure things out? Well, I went home that night and I spun his words around over and over again in my head, and I thought to myself, have I wasted my time? What was he talking about, this notion of being reborn? Frankly, I was baffled. But Jesus hadn't seemed to be in any hurry to explain it to me either. He wasn't in any hurry to save me, or to get me to sign on any dotted line that I understood and believed. I knew then that somehow I was in the midst of some kind of deep mystery. It's been a long time now since that confusing conversation. And somehow I'm not near as certain about what I know about God as I thought I was back then. Lately, I've been remembering another little piece of that conversation that night, and I'm starting to understand that a little better now. Jesus also mentioned that night that God's Son entered this world so that everyone who believes in him might live forever. It wasn't to judge people who didn't understand. That's not why Jesus came. It was to save people from everything that holds them back from risking in life, from trying another way. And surely he must have meant me too when he spoke those words. I still can't say that I've got it all figured out, but I'm much more sympathetic to his cause. Well, back a few years ago, I even defended him before my fellow religious colleagues when they tried to condemn him without a fair hearing. You know, that's even more than his disciples did. They all just seemed to back away. But I'm still not ready to throw it all in there and stand behind him. Sometimes it's like I'm waffling between my old way of seeing things and the new ideas that Jesus is speaking about. Almost like I've got my feet in both places. I wonder too if maybe that's not what Jesus meant. Maybe this whole idea about faith is not about an arrival point. Maybe it's not about having all the I's dotted and the T's crossed. Perhaps like birth from our mother's wombs, it takes some gestational time. Who knows, maybe it takes even our entire lives. And maybe being reborn is an ongoing process of seeking and listening to the Spirit in our lives and asking and wrestling with the hard questions, learning to see things in new ways, like the ways of God's love, the ways of God's justice. Somehow I think maybe it's perhaps a little bit more like the way it was for Abram and Sarah. You know, just simply hitting that open road, riding through the curves and the bumps along the way and the detours, and also rejoicing in the beautiful vistas along the way. Maybe that's what it means to be reborn. Just opening myself up to being more vulnerable, maybe like a baby. Maybe starting all over again by exploring the world in new ways, by seeing the stranger with new eyes, by acting with more understanding towards others who are vulnerable in my community. Is he the Messiah? I can't say for certain yet. In fact, you might say I'm kind of stuck in my thinking on that. It's like that conversation we had all those years ago is still kind of working on me. All I know is that I'm on some kind of a path, some kind of a journey. It's like I have kind of pieces of the puzzle, but not the whole puzzle yet. Little glimpses. I feel somehow that the way I look at things is not the same as how I used to look at them. Now there seems to be a bit more shades of gray, where before I thought I had all the answers, or I could readily find them if I studied the law or if I memorized some scriptures. That conversation about the Spirit being like the wind has convinced me that faith is not something that is nailed down as I once thought it was. Not so neatly packaged and all tied up in a bow. It's more than the stuff I've worked hard to commit to memory. It's something a whole lot deeper that moves from my head somehow to my heart. It's about being transformed not just once, but each and every day of my life. Something that continues to present new possibilities. You know, all I know for sure is that night I felt like a beginner, as if I was starting all over again. Amen.